moved to Los Angeles almost 10 years ago, I wanted to share with you my roommate hunting experience and how much more affordable an apartment was back then. I don't have much video footages of what Hollywood looked like back in the day, but hopefully you can maybe look at this right now and what's happening currently with all the traffic that's still going on. I wanted to get creative and do a walk and talk style vlog. I didn't want to just stare at a camera and tell a story, but I realized it was much harder to do that with all the background noise. As you can see in the previous clip, I got distracted with the honking when that car realized they needed to get into the middle lane. So here's my story. I started my roommate search months before moving to LA. I seriously received all kinds of weird messages. I received several messages from old men looking for young female roommates. I also received messages of people renting out their couch or their living room, and I specifically asked for a roommate or a room share. I also got weird messages from people asking me to send a headshot or a photo of myself. I received a message from a guy who was renting out his couch in West Hollywood. I didn't even know he was renting out his couch. It was not mentioned in the ad. He also said that the closet is off limits because that is where he keeps his bike. Like, where am I supposed to put my clothes? I also spoke to a set of roommates who ended up being so flaky, all because I wasn't willing to leave my job and my hometown a week or two earlier. Not being from LA, I found all of this very weird and frustrating. Eventually, I found a roommate who had a one-bedroom apartment for about $1,000. I temporarily moved in, shared the apartment with her and a third person. She was never home, or she was either sleeping in the living room so she can save money. Most of the time, I had the apartment to myself. So, we had some drama. We seriously had trouble finding a third person who wanted to stick around long term. People were seriously moving in and out within a span of like 2 months. After a few months of trying to help her find a long-term third person so that we could split it 3 ways, it really wasn't working out. And she didn't want to split 2 ways because that would be a little bit more expensive for her. I suggested we all part ways because her money situation wasn't really ideal at the time, and I didn't want to deal with the stress anymore. Well, I didn't want to deal with her stress. But I do appreciate her giving me a place to stay for a few months when I just moved to LA. But now I am back to apartment and roommate searching, which was a total nightmare. The only thing I knew of was Craigslist. I searched and posted ads looking for roommates. I still got weird messages from old men wanting young female companions as a roommate. I also made it clear in my request that I wanted a female roommate around my age. I also stated that I only wanted to live in Hollywood or West Hollywood. I had so much trouble finding what I wanted, so I decided to be less picky and respawn and meet up with most people to see if maybe there's anything good enough for me to change my mind. Well, mistake number 1, I met up with one guy around my age who was so weird. I found out in person that he only wanted to share his 1-bedroom apartment with a female, but that's not what he advertised. He advertised that I was going to get my own space. I totally declined, and he actually kept hitting on me through text messages and said that he can help my career. That meeting was such a waste of time. I also received a call from another guy who was 10 years older than me, and I told him up front that he is not in the age range that I'm looking for, and he wasn't a female. His place was also in Studio City. I told him Hollywood or West Hollywood only. His response was, well, it's only over the freeway. If you sat in Los Angeles bumper to bumper traffic, nothing is really over the freeway or just 5 minutes away. I got one call from another girl who lived in a valley somewhere. At this point, I lost it. I remember screaming at her, asking, "Did you read my ad?" I said Hollywood or West Hollywood only. Her reply was, "Well, it's just over the freeway." She was nice, despite my attitude, so I thought maybe I should just be more open-minded and meet her. I drove over that freeway. It was not worth it. It was out in the middle of nowhere, and she wanted somebody to occupy her bedroom while she parties and works 3 jobs. I'm like, no. I eventually gave up on roommate hunting, and I just got my own spot. This was the best decision I have ever made because I hated being misled by people telling me that things are just over the freeway. I also just hated the men using roommate hunting sites trying to look for women. I apologize in advance for the blurry pictures. Back then, we all had the iPhone 5 or 4, so these are the only photos I have of my apartment. This is the studio I got. It was really close to the Pantages Theater. I got it for $900 with a parking spot. My property manager was also super responsive and great. I also got this place because of my coworker who referred me here. She's related to the property manager. The apartment was spacious, it had an extra closet storage, and a pretty big kitchen. The downside was that there was no AC or heater. I ended up moving out when my lease was over because I was getting tired of Hollywood. I was so tired of the heavy traffic. Like, what was I thinking wanting to only move to Hollywood or West Hollywood? And now after the pandemic, this area has actually gotten a lot worse. But I loved my experiences of living in Hollywood, like being able to walk to a bar and enjoy all the happy hours. I was so close to Trader Joe's, and I loved going celebrity sighting when there was like a summer premiere. And I left on good terms. The property manager said that I am always welcome back. I was curious on how much rent has increased on my old Hollywood apartment. I looked on the website like before the pandemic, and it seriously went from like $900 to $1,500 for that studio. Before I go, I wanted to share an apartment that I saw that was such a great deal. It was in East Hollywood. I eventually decided to just go somewhere closer to work and closer to downtown. This was a 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment for $925. When I was viewing it, they were actually doing renovations. They were going to upgrade the floors, and the kitchen was going to be upgraded to granite, all for $925. Look at the space. I don't know how much this would be now, but this is my story and proof that Los Angeles was way more affordable back then. If I were to share one tip on apartment hunting to newcomers in Los Angeles, it is to really screen out the person that you're going to live with. When you're new to the city and you don't know anybody, it's really hard to find a reasonable and honest person. If it's within your budget, I think that you're kind of better off getting your own spot. But if you do want roommates, you should look for the apartment first and then find the roommates later, because you don't want to be on their terms. You want to be able to set the rules. I also have one more tip, and it is parking. It is so important to have parking in your building. Hope you enjoyed this story time and walking tour. If you have any tips or stories on roommate or apartment hunting, go ahead and leave it in the comments.